Hello, good people. I hope all is well with you today. Today is June 5th, so that makes it the fifth day of Uterine Cancer Awareness Month. And I do consider myself a uterine health advocate. And as one, I think it's important for me to align myself with this month and provide as much information that I can find about uterine health and uterine cancer. So that is why I'm committed to posting as much as possible during the month of June to provide information that hopefully will be of help to you. So I want to say thanks for engaging with the channel, and engaging means subscribing, commenting, liking, viewing, sharing, and things of that nature. So I really do appreciate you. I wanted to, I've always say my disclaimer. My disclaimer is I'm not a medical doctor, and if you want to read the full disclaimer, you can always go into the description. I want to share with you today about questions that I, consistently ask myself, which causes me to dig deeper and, do research. And I provide information high level, right? Because I said I'm not a medical doctor. And hopefully this sparks an interest for someone that may be on this journey or know someone on this journey, that something that I say will lead to some kind of positive, whether it's going to the doctor or doing a little deep dive of research. So one of the things that I was asking myself recently was, like yesterday, was, how common is uterine cancer, which they also call endometrial cancers, by the way. And I really wanted to know the mortality death rates as well, statistically in the US. And I'm asking this question because they say, this is on the rise. Okay, so it's on the rise. But, how common is it? Who gets it? What's the death rate? I mean, I just really wanted to know those type of things, and I think it's important to put things in perspective and know that as well. So usually when I start my search, sometimes I will, for something like this, because I'm looking for current data, that I will go out to do an internet search. And so I specifically asked about those things in the U.S. only because I'm in the U.S. and I wanted to know those numbers. How common is it, and what's the mortality rate is what I really wanted to know. So I got a paragraph overview, and it just jumps right into it. Because I think I asked first, like, how many women die from uterine cancer per year. Then I went on another search. So what I got from my internet research says that about 14,450 women in the U.S. are estimated to die from uterine cancer. So I said, wow, I wasn't expecting that number. I don't know the ratio to other cancers, but I was like, wow. And they said that, the survival rate there's an overall 5-year survival rate if your cancer is caught early, but they did say this is one of the cancers where both the incident of getting the cancer or being diagnosed with the cancer and the mortality rate have been increasing. So I thought that was pretty interesting, that it's been increasing, people being diagnosed with it, as well as, women dying from it. And so for my overall internet search, it gave me the mortality statistic. So like it said before, there's a total estimate of 14,450 women that will die per year from uterine cancers. And it talks about the racial disparities as well. The death rate for Black women is nearly double for that of white women. So they saying so the statistic said here, for every 100,000 women, 9 Black women will die from this cancer, compared to white women is 4.6. So if you have 100,000 women, nine of those women that have uterine cancer will die from it if you're Black. If you're white, it's 4.6. So, and I know sometimes people say, oh, why do people bring race and things of that nature? I think it's important to, when you're looking and doing your research, you see how things affect you, your community, your ethnicity, your race, your gender, because different things affect different ways. I mean, we hear that a man can have a heart attack this way, but it might be different for a woman. So I don't think there's anything wrong with getting to the specificness of, if that's a word, of, trying to find out, how it's affecting you and your body. So, but this is just what they just happened to give. And like they said, the overall, 5-year survival rate is 84% for white women and 63% for Black women. That is what they're saying that is. So I decided to go, of course, do a little digger deeper and maybe go to a more, just not to have the overall internet search. And I decided to go ahead and I went to the American Cancer Society, and I wanted to know, I found an article and it pretty much answers some of the questions, not some of the two basic questions that I have, how common is endometrial cancer? So according to the American Cancer Society, and they updated this January of this year. So that's why I was looking for something that was a little more current. So according to the American Cancer Society, it estimates for endometrial cancer, which is also uterine cancer, in the United States for 2026. They're already projecting for 2026 about 68,270 new cases of endometrial uterine cancer will be diagnosed. So that's almost 69,000 women. They're estimating, the American Cancer Society, that in 2006, the year that we're in, about 69,000 women will get a diagnosis for endometrial/uterine cancer. And so the specific number that is here is 68,270. 68,270. And they said, and they also provide information, and they said so of those numbers, they are saying 14,450 women will die from endometrial cancer. So about 69,000 women will get the diagnosis. I'm just rounding it up. 15,000 will die from the cancer. And it made me think about, these are the women that have gone to the doctor to say, hey, I'm having this. This is what's happening in my body. And these are the women that are being diagnosed. I thought to myself, how many women go undiagnosed? And when I think about the numbers of 14,450 women that are going to pass from this cancer, I think about the women that have it and don't even know. And will that be represented on their death certificate? I think statistical and science stuff is very important to me, at least for my personal opinion, because it gives us some kind of idea. Do I rely solely on sciences? No, but I believe the science because they do research and and they present the data. I'm always looking for data and numbers and things of that nature. So, and further on in this article from the American Cancer Society, it answers my question of like, who gets endometrial uterine cancer, right? So the thing that they just said was like, endometrial cancer is the fourth most common cancer for women in the United States. It's the fourth most common cancer for the women in the United States. And I'm thinking about how many women don't even know about uterine cancer, endometrial cancer, and it's the fourth. That's pretty, to me, that's pretty high. It's not like the 20th or the 10th, that's fourth. And they said about 68% of uterine cancer diagnosed are diagnosed in the early stage, which is great. And it's largely because of the abnormal vaginal bleeding and early symptoms. And that's why I say, if you have early symptoms, you see any kind of vaginal bleeding, please go to your doctor. Please go to your doctor. So, and this particularly happens, it says after menopause. So again, who gets endometrial cancer? It typically happens after menopause, and 68% are diagnosed with cancer in the early stage because they do go see their doctor. So catching something in the early stage is so important. You think about, I don't know, I'm just thinking about home repairs. If you see a little leak, to take care of that immediately before it becomes a big leak, right? And that's probably not a good comparison, but that's kind of what I'm dealing with in the house now. I have a leak. So that's what I'm thinking about. So that's who gets endometrial cancer. And it mainly affects women postmenopausal. And the average diagnosis for a woman for endometrial cancer is 60. It's very uncommon they say for women under 45. When they say it's uncommon, it doesn't say it doesn't happen. It just says it's uncommon. So it's most common for postmenopausal women, and it's 60, so around that age. So I also what I really love this article because it gave you some incident trends as well. And so one of the trends that it noticed that endometrial uterine cancer has stabilized overall in white women in the most recent years. However, they're saying rates of all other racial and ethnic groups has increased continually. So in white women, they noticed the trends that it's kind of stabilized in the recent years. But when it comes to women of all other race and ethnicity groups, they're noticing a continued increase. And they say that increase has gone from 1.8 to 2.6 from 2013 to 2022. So to me, that's a 9-year, not even a 10-year gap that they've seen 1.8 to 2.6. That's an increase. And that's definitely something to take note because it's almost like at 3%. And then I'm thinking to myself, and these are the women that go to the doctor that they're able to get this statistical information from. I'm still thinking about the women that don't go to the doctor. So it also tells you about the mortality trends and the death rates, which is what I was very much interested in too. So they're saying that endometrial uterine cancer is one of the few cancers with increasing mortality rates. And they're saying from 2014 to 2023, the death rate from endometrial uterine cancer rose by 1.6 per year. So every year from 2014 to 2023, it has rose by 1.6 years. So the death rate is increasing. They said the endometrial uterine cancer death rate in Black women has nearly doubled compared to white women. So again, the statistic shows that for every 100,000 women, nine Black women will die from this, compared to 4.6 of a white woman will die from it. So it's definitely nearly doubled for Black women. And they're linking it to the likely unequal access to high quality treatment. And I'm going to go yes with that because, when you're online, you see a lot of stories, but people do go to the doctors. People do take advantage of their health benefits. But I'm going to say this. A lot of people aren't getting the quality care, which is what they say, high quality treatment. And sometimes you're so exhausted at your wits' end that you just forget it, because you go to a doctor, they don't think you're serious, they kind of blow it off, and then you have to advocate, you got to fight your insurance. It's a lot to really take care of yourself, so you don't have that peace. So I could see why, the rates might be higher for Black women and other racial and ethnic groups if they don't have the good quality care, they don't know the questions to ask, and, to advocate for themselves. So, I know that was a lot of statistical, maybe you might think a little morbid information, but statistical data information to me is valuable because you get to see what's going on. When they say that, what is this, 68% of people will get the diagnosis in the early stages, but when it talks about the numbers here about close to 69,000 women will be diagnosed with this year, and around 15,000 will be passing away this year. And this is from the American Cancer Society, and this is their projection for 2026. So they're forecasting this, right? And then you think about who gets this, women, in their 60s or a little bit before that, and, the trends, you see the trends of what's happening. So, I think that for me, the numbers put it in perspective why I'm seeing, the clarion call, why this is on the rise and why we need to pay attention to it, because since it's the fourth cancer for women. And then especially if you are a Black woman or a woman of other races, I think it's important for you to pay attention to that too, that it's double. The rate is increasing, the death rate is increasing for us as women, Black women, and other ethnic and minority groups as well. So we need to pay attention to those numbers and really figure out maybe in our own community why this is happening, and maybe hone in a little bit more. I would love to know statistically, me, myself, if the American Cancer Society or anybody else has information about my community, because that could, environmental things do affect it as well. I don't know if you guys remember the Aaron Brockovich story, and I guess there was a town and there was a plant nearby, and people were suffering from a kind of cancer. So it also could be environmental things too. So I would love to know if they have that kind of data, and maybe I'll look that up as well. See how one thing leads to the next, and then I go on a search. But these are things that we need to be, thinking about. So I hope that something about this conversation today, puts perspective in whatever you may be, your own journey, no matter what it is, that, we have to be grateful. When I saw those numbers, I was very, 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 very grateful. So per usual, I always try to leave you some article references that I will put in the description. So the first one is I'm going to put in from the American Cancer Society, which was just updated January 2026, which I just kind of broke some of that stuff down. And it's the key statistical for endometrial cancer. The second thing I'm going to place into the description is from the National Cancer Institute. It didn't have a date, but it had cancer stat facts, uterine cancer. The third one I'm going to put it down there is the National Library of Medicine. It didn't have a date either. Trends of uterine cancer mortality in the U.S. So I did focus mainly on the American Cancer Society, but I was able to kind of skim and see some good points in the other two articles. That's why I listed them there. So again, I post this stuff so that it's not stuff, this very valuable information, especially during Uterine Cancer Month, so that this will be something, that just providing you with more information for you to understand why this awareness is so much needed. So thanks so much for listening. I hope that you go about your day. You have a wonderful day. And we're going to be praying for these numbers, that they go down, they decrease instead of increase. Um, yeah, and we got to figure out what we need to do as people, to figure out what we need to do to help those numbers go down, especially when we think about as a Black woman and other races and minorities. Okay, thanks so much. See you next time. Have a wonderful day.